Hello friends, Mystery here reporting live for Sloptide News Network, your most trusted source for all things Darktide and of course Slop. And today is perhaps a pretty monumentous day for Darktide. A very critical thing has just been posted to the forums, an incoming balance changes dev blog, which is very odd. This is not in concurrence with a major update, it doesn't seem, but as I'm about to make very clear to you, I have not read this post yet. I have some hopes about what is entailed within, but I am going to be doing it live here for the viewing audience, and this is going to be my actual real reactions to reading this for the first time. So what I suspect this is probably doing a major balance overhaul and something very akin to what we saw back in the day in Vermintide 2, where they called the Big Balance patch, or the Big Balance beta, when it was still in testing. And that would be very exciting. I think this is the sort of thing that Darktide would very much benefit from, is shaking up the meta with some frequency. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive in here. So, Warband, next week's patch will come with some balance changes that we've been working on for a while now. Balancing the gameplay is important to us, and we've been following the discussions around the topic. Okay, so the other thing that was very curious about this, by the way, is that QuickPaul here had not posted anything as of yesterday. So this like showed up overnight, which is kind of different. So over time, they think they've expanded and improved weapons, talents, new classes. The overall player power has increased in the game. Agree. To maintain the intended difficulty, we've increased the enemy density and spawn rate of elites. Agree. While this has kept the game intense, it has also introduced new challenges for us, very obviously. As difficulty rises, enemy count increases, and in especially enemy dense scenarios, this often impacts performance and stability. Yes, hugely, and it's really difficult. I can't even imagine being a console player these days. At the same time, as we rely on an increased number of elite enemies to scale the difficulty, we also narrow down the range of effective player loadouts. Yes, multiplicative loadouts that do area of effect damage, loadouts that can effectively handle multiple targets at the same time, because you don't need to focus on the target that's already dying over there because they're dying of standing in a tox bomb or whatever it is. Those sort of things are insanely powerful when you have infinity enemies on the screen. It's important to us that you can use your favorite loadouts in as many scenarios as possible and not box players in too much. Yes, you don't necessarily need to make players more powerful overall. You need to reduce the efficacy or the necessity of those top-of-the-line loadouts. And the reason that the top-of-the-line loadouts that we see in the game are so prevalent is because of this enemy quantity issue, the number of enemies that have these certain challenges to them. So our long-term goal is to bring these elements back into better alignment. We want to preserve the intensity of the combat while making it more stable, more readable, yes, please, and more supportive of different builds and loadouts. This means toning down the most extreme of enemy scenarios while also addressing a small number of player power outliers that have been shaping our encounter design. Flame staff, it's like you're sweating right now. This update focuses on carapace armored enemies, especially Ogren Crushers. These enemies and the tools used to counter them have become a central part of the current meta. As we lower how frequently these threats appear, we're also adjusting the most dominant anti-carapace options. Oh boy. So wait, so this is going to roll out next week. And I guess maybe not everything is included here. Maybe this is just the carapace patch. Let's see. Enemy changes. This changes at first pass at reducing the amount of Ogren Crushers across the game. Do note that the value below is an average across multiple missions, and any single mission may still have fewer or more Crushers, still lower than before though, based on the specifics of the run. This is to maintain a healthy variation in the randomized spawning system with the goal of keeping every mission fresh and exciting. With that being said, we're gonna continue, that's a weird phrase to use in this sense, gonna continue to monitor post-patch and adjust accordingly. Enemy spawns, lowered Ogren Crusher spawn amount by about 30% on average. This affects ambient spawns, horde spawns, and event spawns. And they're also gonna say they remove rotten armor, right? It's something's going on here. Okay, I'm not gonna look at it yet. Okay. An additional 15% on average reduction in Ogren Crushers, Bulwarks, and Reapers, which in Havoc, by the way, Havoc has a doubled, or maybe it's even tripled value for that, for the amount of large Ogren enemies. So this is extra needed there. Rotten Armor Modifier. The armor type override has been changed from Carapace Armor to Infested. Oh, thank the sweet Lord of Omnissiah above. Like, this was so huge. This change alone is such a massive change. Not only was the absolute HP fuck you block of enemies of carapace armor being slammed upon you, just so impossible with this with rotten armor. But it just necessitated that you only bring enemies that were effective against carapace, or only bring weapons that are effective against carapace, and that means that you are narrowed down to like 5% of all weapons. So now you can run a hive scum with guns or whatever and not run into rotten armor and be like, oh, I can't do literally anything. Awesome. That's a great first change. This will allow for a greater diversity of weapons to be brought into... Yeah, duh. Lowered the amount of rotten enemies spawn. Good. Okay. I mean, this one modifier here, as I've covered several times in specific videos about it, is the single largest outlier in terms of Havoc difficulty. And personally, as a relatively skilled player, I don't actually care, right? I know how to combat it. It doesn't kill me. What makes it really unfavorable, why I really don't like this modifier, is it is far too much of a difficulty spike and far too intense for the average player who's playing at, say, Havoc 25. The game will end up feeling something like a Havoc 35 or a Havoc 40, and those players are not ready for that difficulty, and then they get fragged out, and then that just causes them to have a bad time, and then it causes me to lose my games, and I don't like that. Okay, we've been tweaking the limits of the amount of enemies that have been allowed to spawn at the same time. This is to ensure that the performance of the game is better during high tension moments where there might be an extreme amount of enemies spawning. I had noticed something to that to that extent I hadn't seen with the last patch or the last go around of Rotten Armor. I didn't notice any of those absolutely like jam-pack your entire map full of Rotten Armor enemies. So it seems that they had capped the amount of like reinforcement spawns it could make, but that's pretty good. Uh-oh. I just read the bottom. Class changes. So it's not just carapace armor. Oh god. How long is this post? Hold on, I gotta glance. Oh, it's pretty fucking long. It's pretty okay, let's get into it. As we're lowering the amount of carapace armored enemies you will encounter, to maintain balance, we're also tweaking some of the strongest anti-carapace tools. Oh, crack grenades. We hardly knew ye. Veteran, split talent demolition stockpile into different replenished timers for each blitz. Crack grenades from 60 to 90 seconds, frag and smoke grenades remain unchanged at 60 seconds. Yes! What a quality change here. This is something they did with the Arbites, and it has worked very well for him, right? It has given diversity to where you might actually consider, for once, using some of the other abilities. You might actually consider bringing the dog with the dog detonation talent versus the shock mine, because the shock mine has a 90-second replenish. Crack grenades are so fucking strong, and they are instant solutions. Smoke grenades are really good, but only against certain compositions, and frag grenades are really, really good, but they are not a solution to a lot of the really big problems that the game poses to you right now, which is just these crazy like carapace armored hordes. So this is, first of all, this is not that big a deal. I want to stress to veteran players, if you've heard me talk about the veteran and how he produces grenades, if you are a veteran player at all, you know that we just dodged a bullet here, right? Okay, just don't tell Fast Shark, but it's not this talent that makes veteran crazy with grenades, right? It's demolition team. It's the one that makes you get 5% of all elite and special kills back as grenades, because over the course of a 40-minute game, what's this going to do? This is going to, instead of you getting 40 grenades in 40 minutes, you'll get 20, whatever, 25-ish grenades. I can't math. But yeah, you're going to get like, let's say instead on a 30-minute game where I can actually do the math, instead of getting 30 grenades, you'll get 20. That's a 10 grenade difference. But if you end up killing 500 elites and specials with you and your whole team, you get 1% of those. So that's, or so you get 5% of those. So that's 25 nades that you would get out of that, and that is staying in the game. So this is going to still work with both of these, which means that this is barely a nerf at all. It's just going to mean that you're probably less likely to go into a combat with like every single grenade completely full. Hive Scum Boombringer is being changed from 3 to 2. I think this is an absolutely warranted change. 4 rockets is so absurd, especially considering there's not that many other classes in the game that have good blitzes right now. They are really, really weak in general in comparison. The rocket launcher and the chem grenades are like leagues above other grenade choices, and so more or less you'd have Hive Scum, who it's like, okay, we got one Hive Scum on our team, he's got the rocket launcher, he literally gets dibs on every single grenade pack the entire game long. And so this guy's going to end up shooting like 30 rockets across the course of the game. Even more, of course, if you have the Veterans Resupply talent, and this will be a nerf to that as well with the field improvisation, so that he only caps out at 3 with the extra pouches. Then Chem Grenade is going from 3 to 2, so 4 to 3 as well. Again, and another insanely impactful grenade. And I think this is an awesome, awesome change because these grenades are, again, like I said, tremendously more powerful than any other blitzes in the game. Like, they have no reason to be as powerful as they are, considering the baseline power of the Hive Scum is doing just fine as well. And the other really big thing here is that the flashbang grenades go underused by many players because of the sheer power of those like actual expendable grenades. So this will get more players to use those, which are very, very good grenades in their own right. And those are going untouched, which is awesome. And then the Chem Toxin Dot. Damage per tick while at max stacks changed from 440 to 350. I'll do some testing and I'll get back to you when we talk about Hive Scum. I'll have some updated Hive Scum stuff within like the week or so. But that, I think that's just going to, I don't know if it's going to scale across the course of the whole thing. Ultimately, this doesn't really matter a whole lot. The thing that it matters for bosses, right? But that was already a problem here. For lower health, like normal enemies, like crushers, etc., this change doesn't effectively matter because they have a low enough health pool that like those ticks are happening like 2 or 3 times a second, and it just eats right through them, right? So you won't feel this on anything. Like, clearly, still, if you shoot a special with a needle pistol, they're going to die to 1 tap of the needle pistol because 6 stacks of toxin is still going to be more than enough to kill their very small health bar. What was happening, though, is that if you took the needle pistol and you just immediately 5-tap the boss and drop them to and put them to 30 stacks of toxin, and then that's multiplied by whatever other factors you had on the class, you would end up dealing, 45,000 damage to this 100,000 HP boss, and you didn't even have to touch them. You could literally just tap them up with the needle pistol and then keep your distance, and then just watch as it just completely ate their health. And it was far too easy to maintain. It's just like kind of like a no-brainer. Dots in games like Darktide are always problematic, so you gotta like kind of keep an eye on them. And from the beginning, when they were like showcasing this, I was like, oh, well, if it's just really effective against Carapace, that's fine. But it ended up having a really, really high ceiling in terms of the damage when it's applied to bosses as well, and that's not fine because the Hive Scum already does enough damage without having a massive boss withering damage tick. Weapon and blessing changes. So we are getting a ton of changes here. This is very much a big balance overhaul, and seems like this is the first thing, as I said up here, this is like the first thing, the first step they're going to go into here. So they're going to see how this plays out, and hopefully they got some more like ready in the wings. Uncanny Strike, Opportunist, and Bladed Momentum. Ooh. Uncanny Strike, Opportunist, and Bladed Momentum weapon blessings provided a relatively easy way to gain a large amount of rending, which could then be applied to any outgoing damage from the player, and not just to damage coming from the melee weapon or towards the enemy that was being hit to trigger the blessing. So if you are unclear on how this works, by the way, rending, as they use it with the capital R rending there, rending is a modifier that adds basically true damage to your character. So if your weapon has an innate 50% armor penetration, meaning when you look at the base value on the weapon, if it's doing half of that to Carapace, well, with 2 stacks of 25% rending, you'll be at now 100%. So you'll deal basically true damage to them. And any rending past that is converted at, I think it's like a 1 to 4 rate. So you end up having an actual damage buff. And that is like just really, really good across all things. And it's effective against not only Carapace, but also hurts unyielding, aka monstrosity bosses as well. And yeah, so that has been very, very dominant, as many of you know, and this has just happened. Uncanny Strike was changed to apply brittleness to the enemy being hit instead, allowing the player to still reach a considerable bonus, 40%, but only after repeatedly striking the specific enemy in melee. Awesome, that's a great change. Brittleness, by the way, is just armor penetration, but for everybody. So this is going to help the whole team. Like Uncanny Strike still sounds like it's going to be one of the best blessings in the game. A 40% armor reduction is huge. And as I mentioned, this will probably take longer to stack up, but as I mentioned, a lot of these weapons that have Uncanny Strike, they already have a big innate amount of rending to them. They're not dealing 0% damage to armor, they're dealing 50%. And so if you take 40% off of the remaining, you're now dealing 90%. So this is going to be perfectly fine. And I, for one, highly encourage changes like this because blessings in this sense have sat at the top of the meta for so long because of this Carapace problem. And now if the Carapace problem is less, and we don't see the need to run this as much, we can actually run other fucking blessings and have different builds and different metas, which I am a big supporter of. Opportunist and Blade of Momentum were changed to apply their rending bonus only to melee attacks instead of any offensive effects, which, again, this was another really big thing that was obviously a problem. If you had any bleed effects or something on your weapon and you were going into Carapace or going into Unyielding where you could stack that rending, if you stacked the bleed up and then you stacked rending, the bleed would suddenly jump, like skyrocket in value. So remains to be seen that if this melee attacks can apply to bleeds from melee attacks, but I'm assuming that it does not. But Opportunist and Blade of Momentum, these are very seldom chosen. This one, Opportunist, by the way, this is on the Ogren's Slab Shield. This is how he gets its 25% rending against staggered enemies. Probably not the one that a lot of players are choosing. And Blade of Momentum is on the... I believe it's on, like, the Devil's Claw, right? No, it's on the Heavy Sword. I know that for a fact. I think it might just be on the Heavy Sword, or maybe, like, the Axe or something, too. So, yeah, that's the change here. Oh, here's actual numbers. Awesome. Okay, so we can see here, we are getting from 8 stacks, or from 24% rending per weak spot hit, which maxed at 120%, which is over true damage, to 8 stacks of 2.5% brittleness. So read 20% brittleness per weak spot hit with a max of 40. So literally just hitting them twice in the head is going to give them a 40% brittleness debuff, which is massive. That's huge. Like, that is so good. And this applies to the Combat Blade, the Dueling Sword, the Sapper Shovel, and the Blaze Force Sword. So, wow. I actually think that will be pretty dang good for a lot of different purposes. Interesting to see. Shivs, our lovely shivs, they had 8% rending per weak spot hit to 4 stacks, so 10% brittleness. This remains to see how this works out. So previously you had hit 5 times. I don't know what the exact math would be here on the shivs. I know the calculation is slightly different when it comes to brittleness versus rending and how it calculates it, because it reduces their armor and their damage reduction versus increasing the base damage that you deal, true damage-wise, but I don't think that's going to be a very big hit at all. The shivs, like, obviously are already powerful enough on their own. And then this change here, I don't think this is going to be very impactful. This will really mainly impact if you're using Opportunist on, like, your Slab Shield or on... I think Arbides has it's on his shield, right? Or it's maybe on his mace. Or if you stagger the enemies, then they would take extra damage from dog bleeds and dog stuns and stuff like that. So a little bit of a debuff to that. But it's okay, because again, remember that the number of Carapace armored enemies is going to go down, so the rending isn't like the be-all, end-all, which every fucking build has to have, which I think is definitely amazing. The Psyker, Blaze Force Swords, and Veteran Saber Shovels were significantly affected by the changes to Uncanny Strike Blessing. Yes, obviously, because these weapons are dependent on their buffs to be good. They are not highly powered at a baseline, like stats-wise, like these weapons up here are. You know, the Combat Blade and the Dueling Sword and the Shivs. These guys really rely on those blessings to maintain their power, so they raise their offensive properties with a particular focus. Ooh, shovels in the meta, baby! With a particular focus on their performance against Carapace armor. Baseline effectiveness of these weapons is going up, and it will allow for more competition and variance in the blessing slots. So we are seeing, and I'll convert this to English for you here. So basically, for our shovel, for our Sapper Shovels, it looks like we're jumping up somewhere on the order of like 10%. This is a 25% buff against Carapace. This is a roughly 10% buff against all of those Flak Armor Maniac Unyielding types. Yeah, we're seeing some solid buffs here. Impact is going up a little bit, and yeah, we're seeing also that the light attacks now on shovels can hurt Carapace only 1/5 of the normal value, but better than 0, better than literally dinking off them being able to do nothing, which is pretty cool. We're also seeing just damage scales across the board here, and yeah, seems pretty cool, right? Like I definitely agree with this, making these weapons, which previously were only being buoyed and existing in the Carapace stuffed meta, with that Uncanny blessing, since that is now maybe not necessary, we can give them a little bit of power elsewhere, since the Uncanny blessing isn't going to like make them go to the absolute moon. Shivs down here. With Chemtoxin now dealing less damage, we've increased the effectiveness of the Shiv's weapon special direct hit projectiles to weigh up for any missed breakpoints, right? They now want you still to be able to throw that because it applied 3 stacks of Toxin, and previously 3 stacks of Toxin might have been able to, I don't know exactly what breakpoints that would be, but there's probably like a couple of specials out there, or like maybe elites, that if you hit them with the dagger and then 3 stacks, it would take them exactly to death. This is now going to boost this up. And you also, a nice finesse boost too, so getting a headshot is going to be a lot more impactful if you can get a headshot with these little weapon throws. I don't really use that a whole lot, but that's pretty good. The Mark 1 version, the bonus from critical hits was lowered, maintaining the huge offensive spike potential of the weapon, but in a more contained way. Now this is something that I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Right, that's actually big. Because the Mark 1, if you are unaware, is the single target strike down version of the Shivs, the absolutely clearly superior version with the ski poles animation where you just do the twin stabs, the twin overhead stabs, and that thing is disgustingly powerful. As I've mentioned many previous occasions, this thing has, or previously had, a 6x multiplier on the base damage that you would deal when you're getting a headshot and a critical at the same time, which is very easy to do because you have like a 50% crit rate on the Hive Scum, and headshots are very easy when you're doing an overhead strike down. So yeah, you were getting 6x multiplier. This is going to reduce that by 15%. So we're going down a little bit here, which again is not going to ultimately impact a whole lot. This weapon is still massively overkill for like 95% of things in the game, and with a reduction in Carapace armor being out there, I imagine that it's going to remain effective because that was one of the only things that really slowed it down. This weapon is still going to absolutely fuck on bosses and stuff. Dueling Swords. Okay, well, the Dueling Swords heavy attacks still remain an outlier in effectiveness. Of course, you know, you still see me to this day running around with the Dueling Sword, heavy lunging dudes into the, orbital, and just absolutely skewering their brainstem because of their extreme finesse and weak spot and critical hit scaling, something that started way back in patch 14, years and years ago, where they literally doubled the critical hit scaling and doubled the finesse damage in the same patch. They've slightly lowered those properties while maintaining the high mobility and overall ease of use of the weapon family. So they have lowered our, I don't think anyone really uses the heavy strike down. This is only on the Mark. What mark is it? Mark 5 that has the slashes, like the overhead slash. That's probably not going to be most people. The heavy stab is the one most people are going to be concerned with here, the Mark 4. So the ADM versus Carapace armor is dropping from 0.5. Like I was mentioning previously, these weapons don't deal 0 damage to Carapace, they deal half damage. And now they'll deal 40% damage. So yeah, that's what you need to look out for there. And that's probably not going to matter a whole lot. Again, remember that the number of Carapace enemies is going down. So the prevalence of Carapace being killed by this is not the big thing. The big thing for the change here is the finesse boost and the crit boost curve. Going down here, you're not going to be able to hit for as big wallops with those individual stabs as you were before. But still, again, just like with the Shivs here, this weapon is massively overkill for 90% of enemies in the game, and they were already getting one-shot poke to the head. So gunners and shotgunners and pretty much every other enemy, a heavy attack to the face is still just going to kill them. I would imagine. Well, it definitely will, because there's 0 way that this doesn't overkill them when you're killing a crusher in 3 hits previously. Oh boy, it's the Inferno Force Staff. We got details, let's change to the Soul Blaze. Wow, okay. So what is going to happen to the Inferno Force Staff? One of the most problematic weapons in the game currently, dominating the Psyker meta because it is just an infinite ammo flamethrower with no downsides. Let's check. So the Soul Blaze changes are going to be the big thing here, but we're giving a small buff to the Carapace armor, direct hit effectiveness of the Force Staff, allowing it to be effective against the heavily armored targets in a mixed group of enemies. So we're going from 1/4 damage to 1/3 damage. Not bad, I suppose, but yeah, what remains to be seen is what's going to happen to Soul Blaze. Damage over time effects changes. Wow, okay, so this is something that I have been talking about for a long time. Damage over time effects in the game are a very slippery slope, right? Because if you apply bleeds or damage over time of any sort to an enemy, and they are going to take that damage independent of what you're doing. So it basically gives you more action economy. You can set up bleeds and damage over time on one dude and be like assured that they are going to die. They're going to wither away and fall down and die while you go off and fight some other fight. So it just like multiplies your value. So dots are hyper effective, especially if you can get them like on a bunch of enemies at once. So the ease of gaining global rending was significantly lowered due to the changes of melee weapon blending, melee weapon blessings. We have increased the armor damage modifiers, a specific damage over time effects against the Carapace armor type, and overall slightly raised the damages. No, 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 guys, no. Oh god, oh god. Okay, so Soul Blaze is now going to deal twice as much to Carapace. Whatever, I guess. Fine, that's whatever. Okay, and then Soul Blaze ADM versus Carapace armor from 0.1 to 0.25. So burns, this is fine. Like this is for fire. There's not that many things in the game that do fire. It's like Rumbler for Ogren and Recon Lasgun. Both things that are already really good. Oh, and Flamethrower. So Flamethrower gets that. Soul Blaze ADM is going from 0.1 to 0.25, so almost a triple in damage for Soul Blaze. But again, that is actually like still going to do almost 0 damage. Like, you know, just to point this out, Soul Blaze damage per tick while at max stacks changed from 250 to 255. That's nothing. Okay, I was very scared. I was very scared about this when I read that they were increasing they said slightly raised. I was like, oh my god, a 10% increase in damage? No, it's literally a, what is that? 5 out of 250, like a 0.2%. I don't know how to math. Or is it 2%? Whatever. A very, very, very small amount of damage increase, and that's only at max stacks, right? So the individual stacks are going to, there's like 15 stacks, right? So that's going to affect it like 0. What's really going to happen here is you're going to move from a situation where at max stacks versus Carapace you were doing 25 damage to dealing like, what did that be, like 60 or 63 or something like that damage. And that's maybe something. But remember, again, Crushers still have 6,000 HP, so that's not going to really be that effective at all. Yeah, okay, so that is that's what we got going on there. And by the way, the reason they're making this change, if you were unaware, is that what you could do is you could put Soul Blaze and burns and stuff on these enemies, and then you could go in with your rending weapon and hold that out while the burns are still on them. And if you hit them and got your rending up, now it would make all your burns and your bleeds and stuff shoot to the moon. So yeah, that was kind of a toxic little interaction there, and it was very easy for Psychers to use that if they knew what they were doing to wipe out entire hordes of massively armored Carapace for free, and not healthy. All right, so that is everything. Phew, wow, that was something. This update is the first step of many to improve both gameplay balance and technical performance. In future passes, we will continue refining enemy compositions, adjusting outlier weapons, and improving those that have been falling behind. Auto guns, bullet weapons in general, please. Okay, Darktide is at its best when combat feels intense, responsive, and fair. These changes are aimed at supporting that experience, reducing unnecessary extremes while expanding the number of ways players can succeed. There are plenty of other mechanics and enemies that we can improve, such as the high density of Ogren bulwarks. We'll talk more about our shielded enemies in the near future. Please, 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 just take the shields off. No, I'm just kidding. Like, give them weak spot, or make their shield break, or anything. Like, these are one of the most frustrating enemies in the game. I was going to talk about it in the video that I posted just a little bit ago today, the bugs video, and I decided to skip it, and I'm glad I did, because it seems like it's not going to last for very long. Awesome. We'll be closely monitoring feedback and performance data as these changes go live, and we'll continue to iterate based on this. Please let us know what you think of these changes after you had some time testing out them next week. Yeah, so don't comment down below something really mad. This happens next week, okay? And guys, guess what also happens next week? Like 5 days away, I believe on the 13th, that we will be seeing a teaser trailer for our next class, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for watching, guys, and Mr. Riata here. Bye-bye.